The winter air bit sharply against his skin as Daniel stood near the quiet bus stop. His worn-out jacket doing little to keep him warm. Snow gathered along the sidewalks, turning the city into a silent, frozen painting. But for Daniel, there was nothing beautiful about it. His phone battery had died hours ago. His wallet held just enough coins for a bus ride, and his mind was heavy with worries about unpaid tuition and overdue rent. A broke student, far from home, he had grown used to surviving one difficult day at a time. As he shifted his weight, trying to keep warm, he noticed a woman approaching her presence, almost out of place in the dull, gray evening. She was elegant, dressed in a black coat that shimmered slightly under the streetlights, her hair perfectly styled despite the cold wind. Yet, there was something urgent in her expression, something almost desperate. She walked straight toward him, her heels crunching softly against the snow, and stopped, just a step away. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but slightly breathless. "My phone just died, and I really need to make an important call. Could I please use yours?" Daniel hesitated for a brief moment. In a city where trust was rare and scams were common, lending a phone to a stranger wasn't always wise, especially when it was one of the few valuable things he owned. But as he looked into her eyes, he didn't see deceit. He saw urgency in something else, something genuine. Without overthinking it, he reached into his pocket and handed her his phone. "Sure," he said simply. She looked surprised, almost as if she hadn't expected such easy kindness. "Thank you," she replied softly, dialing a number quickly. Daniel stepped back, giving her privacy, his breath visible in the cold air as he watched passing cars blur into streaks of light. He wondered who she was calling, why it seemed so important, but he didn't ask. It wasn't his place. After a short conversation, she returned the phone, her expression now calmer, relieved. "You have no idea how much this helped me," she said, her eyes meeting his with a warm gratitude that lingered longer than expected. Daniel just smiled faintly, brushing it off as nothing. To him, it was just a small act, one moment of kindness in an otherwise difficult life. But as she walked away, she turned back once, as if memorizing his face. Daniel didn't notice the significance of that glance. To him, it was just another cold evening, another stranger passing by. He had no idea that this simple act, letting someone use his phone, was about to change his life in a way he could never imagine. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the faint buzzing of his old phone, the sound unusually persistent for someone who rarely received calls. Groggy and confused, he reached for it, squinting at the unfamiliar number flashing across the cracked screen. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. Most unknown calls meant trouble, reminders of unpaid bills or spam, but something pushed him to answer. "Hello," he said, his voice still heavy with sleep. There was a brief pause on the other end before a calm, familiar voice spoke. "I was hoping you'd pick up." Daniel froze. He recognized it instantly, the woman from last night. Before he could respond, she continued, "You helped me yesterday when I really needed it. I didn't even get a chance to thank you properly." Daniel sat up, suddenly more awake. "It was nothing," he replied, instinctively modest. "Anyone would have done the same." She let out a soft, almost amused laugh. "No," she said gently. "Not anyone." There was a pause again, but this one felt different. "I'd like to meet you today, if you're free. There's something important I'd like to discuss." Daniel hesitated. His schedule was anything but free classes, part-time work, and the constant stress of making ends meet. But curiosity crept in. There was something about her tone, a quiet confidence mixed with sincerity, that made it hard to refuse. "All right," he said finally. "Where?" An hour later, Daniel stood outside one of the most expensive cafes in the city, feeling completely out of place. The glass windows reflected his worn clothes and tired expression, a stark contrast to the polished interior, where well-dressed people sipped coffee without a care in the world. He almost turned back, convinced this was some kind of misunderstanding. But before he could leave, the door opened. She stepped out, just as elegant as the night before, though this time there was no urgency in her eyes, only composure and purpose. "You came," she said, with a warm smile, as if she had expected nothing less. Daniel nodded awkwardly. You said it was important. She gestured for him to follow her inside. As they sat down, he couldn't ignore the way the staff treated her with immediate respect, almost deference. It didn't take long for him to realize that she wasn't just well-dressed, she was someone important. I never introduced myself properly, she said, folding her hands on the table. My name is Alina. Daniel introduced himself in return, still unsure of where this was going. Alina studied him for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. Last night, she began, you helped me without asking questions, without expecting anything in return. That's rare. Daniel shrugged lightly. It was just a phone call. She smiled, but there was something deeper behind it. For you, maybe for me, it was everything. She leaned in slightly, her voice lowering. And I don't forget people who show kindness when they have nothing to gain. Daniel watched closely as Elena reached into her bag. His curiosity, now mixed with a quiet tension, he couldn't explain. She pulled out a slim folder and placed it gently on the table between them. For movements, calm, deliberate. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at him, as if measuring his reaction before he even knew what he was reacting to. I'll be direct, she said finally. I own several companies, and I'm currently funding a scholarship and mentorship program for students who deserve a real chance. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. A scholarship, he repeated, almost cautiously. Alina nodded. Not just financial help, she continued. Full support tuition, housing opportunities, connections, everything needed to build a future. She gently pushed the folder toward him. And I want you to be a part of it. For a second, Daniel didn't move. The cafe noise faded into the background as his mind struggled to catch up with her words. Why me? He asked quietly. You don't even know me. Elena's expression softened, but her answer came without hesitation. Because of exactly that, she said. I didn't know you didn't know me. And still, you helped without suspicion, without hesitation, and without expecting anything in return. She paused, her eyes steady on his. People reveal who they truly are in moments when no one is watching. Last night, I saw who you are. Daniel looked down at the folder, his hands slowly opening it. Inside were official documents, details of the program, and an application form that already had his name written neatly at the top. His chest tightened. Not with fear this time, but with something I've had people offer help before, he said carefully. But there's always a catch. Alina smiled slightly. The only catch, she replied, is that you don't waste the opportunity. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with possibility. Daniel thought about the nights he had gone to sleep hungry, the classes he almost dropped because he couldn't afford books, the constant feeling of being left behind. And now, suddenly, a door stood open in front of him. Why are you doing this? He asked, one last time, needing to understand. Alina leaned back slightly, her gaze thoughtful. Because once, she said softly, someone showed me kindness when I needed it most, and it changed everything. Daniel took a deep breath, then looked up at Hurd, this stranger who was no longer just a stranger. Okay, he said, a small but genuine smile forming. I won't waste it. For the first time in a long while, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside that cafe, something had shifted. A simple act of borrowed phone, a moment of trust, had turned into a life-changing opportunity. And as Daniel stepped into this new chapter, he realized that sometimes the smallest kindness can echo louder than anything else.